Where does culture come from? Why do we need the concept of culture in the first place? In the history of the world, culture is an idea that is relatively new. As with any pursuit of knowledge, the creation of a concept can help to bracket out certain aspects of the human experience for the purpose of understanding ourselves. Edward T. Hall is an early theorist who helped to create a number of concepts that are still useful to interculturalists in understanding how cultures differ and how we can understand how cultures differ. He gives us a treatment of the most important steps in the development of the concept of culture in a short summary chapter. Summarize it here on this slide. He says that 100,000 years ago, language began, which today we think was probably about 150 to 200,000 years ago. Then, about 90,000 years ago, Hall cites the creation of meta-language, which is the language by which we understand language, such as grammar, the language of language. How he places that there, I won't argue, but suffice it to say that the study of language must have come at some point after people began to migrate and language began to change. Then, when writing was invented, transmission of knowledge across distance and time created an innovation that allowed for recording thought in history, but also for promulgation of laws and the maintenance of social order to greater distances, and history and anthropology, although not called those, were created. In fiction, linguistic arts were also born, where truth and fiction could exist side by side, and the way of creating those stories, our story, true or not, established identities, including bigger sociocultural identities with their own languages and artistic cultural expressions. Then, according to Hall, the discovery of the unconscious allowed us to understand the unconscious creation of the technology of order and peace that was not promulgated in writing, but was written on every person who belonged to a group or grew up within a society. That unwritten set of rules, alongside all of the expressions of our stories, histories, and art, became our culture. Culture could be discovered here at this time. Leaving the dates and estimates of time aside that Hall gives us, this is a very compelling explanation of how culture is differentiated and why culture is a relatively new concept from Jung in the 19th century in our world. Then Hall, who worked in diplomacy after World War II, advanced a number of concepts which I cover elsewhere, but which coalesce along with second language acquisition into the science of peace, as I like to call it. For after World War II, there was a need for mutual understanding to avoid global conflicts. People were ready for something, anything that would prevent World War III. Enter language study, international education, and ultimately intercultural competence, which comes to us from the second half of the 20th century. However, without the concept of culture, we probably never could have arrived here. So what is culture then, and how did intercultural competence develop after World War II? Well, first, they called it international education, an education for peace that William Fulbright and Edward Hall tried to envision in the 40s and 50s. Then it became the study of intercultural relations during the Cold War, which focused on history, language, and business for development. Alongside that, as second language research was incentivized through Title VI monies allocated, the birth of second language acquisition, which began in the 1960s and was broadly called intercultural communication and focused on the communicative side of intercultural competence. That gave rise to intercultural communicative competence, which has evolved into what today we call a lot of things, but which for me boils down to intercultural competence. Call it what you will, but it is an essential skill for the future of humanity and for maintaining peaceful relations with culturally different others. And through it all, there is culture, which may be defined in so many ways that who can count them? Well, we will try to look at a few of them and classify different approaches in another video. While use of these videos as presentations for the courses I teach on intercultural competence, they're also freely available for anybody to watch. So please feel free to like it or subscribe to this channel as you see fit, or share it. Your feedback is valuable to me to make sure things are clear. And may you find the peace you are looking for.